Now we come to number 2 in our series on the book of Mark. In our studies as we go through, we're looking here at a day in the life of the ministry of Jesus, and I'm sure everyone was different, and yet they were all very much the same. If you understand what I mean, they were all to do with helping people, teaching them, explaining the kingdom of God to them, and telling them what salvation was really all about, and of course, most of all, dealing with their problems, healing miracles, feeding miracles, exorcising evil spirits, and so on. We're given a lot of material to look at from the other Gospels. The part from Mark is primarily the second part of the very first chapter. And here we see the calling of the first disciples and the beginning of his ministry. And I find it very interesting that in verse 28 it says, news about him spread quickly throughout the whole region of Galilee. And I want to say, I bet it did. Because as soon as you have someone like Jesus who can do all these incredible things, of course people are going to be responsive. If you've got any kind of ailment, or if you've got a family member who's been suffering from sickness, you want to get them to Jesus. And that's what Jesus ended up doing in much of his ministry, was helping people with all those issues. I wonder what it was like for those people who brought their friends, their loved ones themselves to Jesus and experienced that wonderful healing. Now, of course, I do want to say this because people sometimes say, well, why didn't Jesus just heal everybody and be done with it and that was it? Well, healing doesn't last forever, does it? We know that in the end we all die of something, and it would not be very loving to keep us in this world, in this state, forever. I look forward to a time when I don't have all the things that are wrong with me. I look forward to a time when everything is made new, where righteousness dwells throughout the whole of the world. So when we look at a day in the life, we should perhaps think about what it really means to consider those miracles. What were they for? Some people say, well, that was to show Jesus's divinity, to prove who he was, and certainly it did do that. But I want to point to the fact that Jesus did these miracles. He performed them primarily because they were needed, because people had all these issues. Just take a look at those verses there in Matthew 9. He healed all kinds of sicknesses and diseases. Why? Because he was deeply moved with compassion for them. He felt for these people. And then what about feeding all those thousands of people? Why did Jesus to do that? To demonstrate something? Well, yes, it was a demonstration, and to convince the disciples and everybody else who was watching. But listen to what Jesus actually said. I feel really sorry for all these people, because they've been with me now for 3 days and they have nothing to eat. I don't want to send them away hungry in case they faint on their way home. Jesus did these miracles because they were absolutely necessary. They were vitally important to people, whether it's the healing or the feeding or whatever it might be. I think of the man whose son was possessed by that evil spirit. When the 3 disciples and Jesus came down from the Mount of Transfiguration, they encountered this man with his son, and the other disciples have not been able to help. And Jesus right there and then deals with it because it's important. And the Father says, yes, I believe. Help my unbelief. Help me to trust in you, because that's really what I need for my son. So think about that. The miracles are primarily there not to give show, not to demonstrate, but because Jesus showed compassion. He felt for the people as he does indeed today for us.